I did want to go back to what we were talking about earlier about the police brutality. To me, I took it very personal, the whole John Hernandez case. You know, for people who don't know, he's a man that was choked to death outside of a Denny's. It was a police officer's husband, a sheriff's officer's husband, who choked him to death, and she held him down as well. I took a lot of offense for the fact that she didn't get convicted. I just want to know what your thoughts are on why she did not get convicted if she was an accomplice to the murder.
I think that, well, I mean, number one, I'm really, and I'm glad you bring this up because I think more attention needs to be put onto this case as to explain why it rolled out the way it did and when and where it went. And I think one of the important things to point out is that John's family suffered immensely, not only from the initial loss of their son, but also through a mistrial and then a second trial. And I think at the end of the day, they were also tired, and they were, and with good reason. I mean, if you've ever been to a murder trial, it's brutal. We got to see John's body in the autopsy. I mean, things that you never want to see, right? And I think that took a real big toll on them. The problem with Shauna, with Mr. Thompson's wife, was that the laws and the way that penal code is written in Texas and the United States, you have to put beyond a reasonable doubt. So if there's any doubt in what happened, then they're not going to be convicted. And I think the state believed that they didn't have enough reasonable doubt or enough cause to they had enough cause to charge her, but not enough cause to find her guilty, and that's where the decision was made. If they go to another trial and have to review all these things again, and then it could take years for them to get up to that point. The reality, though, is that at the end of the day, there was when you have corrupt policing themselves. There's a lot of lying and a lot of things that go into that, and that's where the color of law. If people are acting on their color of law, meaning that if people are acting by the protection by the superpower that they're given, they sometimes, it's in their human nature to sometimes abuse it. So they will file false reports. They will do this. They will intimidate witnesses. And let's just take, for example, John's wife. She was put in the back of a squad car for 9 hours in the rain, not without any information as to what had happened to her husband, as to where her husband was. She kept asking. There's video of her asking. There's video of her crying, sobbing in the back of the car, and they just kept her there because they wanted to get their story straight before she did. And so I think that it's such a complex. It was such a complex case. It was such a complex situation that it's really difficult to understand. The other part of it, though, is the way that law is written and the way that courts carry themselves. It's difficult to get a person convicted in the state of Texas because the laws were not written to favor us. The laws were written to favor white landowning men during times of segregation, where they could lynch somebody and then be cleared of all charges if there was not a beyond a reasonable doubt in there. So it's hard to talk about these things. These are hard concepts to grasp sometimes, but it's important that we talk about them openly so that people know that there's not just one person responsible for this or the other. A lot of people want to say now that these judges from this party are letting people off with like a slap on the wrist and this and that. But when you take a deep dive and look into the statutes that they have, or like what are they, for example, for a simple murder case, the maximum fine or the maximum bail that you can get is $1 million. 10% of that is $100,000. When there's bonds company that are fighting for 3 or 4%, that's $30,000. I mean, it's nothing if you just murdered somebody, right?
Yeah.
But if they try to hold people without bail, then you as a defendant can sue the state for an unreasonable punishment, because the U.S. Constitution supersedes the Texas Constitution. So these things are not things that we can just, people, same thing, like to throw out talking points and say these Democratic judges or these types of judges that are just letting people out into the street, without realizing that there's so much complexity, even in the way that cases are handled, even in the way that money is managed, that we can't keep track of people 24/7. It's an incredibly corrupt and an incredibly complex system, which people have dedicated. What's that?
There you go. Okay.
It's a really complicated and corrupt system that people have really devoted their whole lives into, and we're still not going to be able to clear it up. So what the best thing to do is to inform people and to sit down with people and set clear expectations as to what we can do, while at the same time advocating for policies to change, for things to change. During the John Hernandez case, that is what we did. We not only, from the beginning, we told the family, this is going to take years, but we're going to be here with you the entire time, because we want to help you out and we want to make sure that John gets the justice that they deserve. And then, but at the same time, we're pushing for policies and for policy changes, and we're pushing all these elected officials to take action, because if we hadn't, the sad reality is that maybe this person would have taken years to get to a grand jury. By that time, the information is not fresh anymore, and more than likely this guy would not even have gotten charges. But it wasn't me, it wasn't FIEL that did that. It was John's family and the community that did that. And we should do that for every case, because the other thing is that I hear a lot from people is that when something happens to the black community, people show out in masses. But when something happens to us, we're nowhere to be seen.
I've heard that a lot. That's one of the, like, Chingos and them talking point. They constantly say that about us.
And that's not their fault. That is our fault. We are responsible for our own community, and the reason why things get done in the black community is when something happens to them, they all show up for each other and they're united in that front. If something happens to us, people will rather go to the quinceañera or the church or the flea market, or they're worried about work, and we don't show up the way that other people show up for their own communities. And it's nobody's responsibility. Your house is nobody's responsibility but your own. And until we realize that, until we show up in large numbers for each other, things are not going to change.
Okay, very good. I'm going to end the interview here, but, I want to give you some last thoughts. We talked about a lot of deep subjects. Anything you want to say?
It's important to continue to dive into. Don't take my word for it. Take everything that I say, fact check it, read about it, come up with your own opinions, but don't just go by what other people tell you. Oftentimes we just go by what benefits us and makes sense to us at that time, without realizing that we may be hurting other people in the long run. That's important. And a special message to Chingo Bling. I invite you to debate publicly at a forum, whether it's online or in person, or we can host an event, and to really talk about issues with experts, and to really ask you, and not to put you on the spot, but rather to really establish dialogue, so that we can hear from both sides. Because it's very easy to sit on the stage and keep people clapping for you if they like you. But it's a different challenge to do what we do and go to places where we're trying to educate people and change their minds and really establish deep dialogue. So the invitation is there. I invite you to come to the table, and at the end of the day, we can really dive deep into a lot of these issues.
All right. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.